The wind howled through the canyons as Kathleen Anderson rode her mare through the rugged terrain of Arizona Territory in the summer of 1878, desperately trying to outrun the dust cloud of riders gaining ground behind her. Her heart pounded against her ribs, knowing that the three men pursuing her weren't fellow travelers looking to share a campfire tale. "Come on, Daisy," she whispered to her exhausted horse. "Just a little farther." Kathleen had left her father's ranch 2 days ago to deliver medicine to her ailing aunt in Copper Springs. Now, just hours from her destination, these men had appeared on the horizon, their intentions clear from the moment they'd spotted a woman traveling alone. The first bullet whistled past her ear, causing Daisy to rear in panic. Kathleen struggled to maintain control as a second shot rang out, this one finding its mark in her saddlebag. The third struck poor Daisy in the flank. The mare screamed in pain before stumbling, sending Kathleen tumbling from the saddle into the hard-packed dirt. Pain exploded through her shoulder as she rolled to a stop, dust coating her navy traveling dress. Before she could gather her wits, 3 horses surrounded her, their riders leering down with expressions that chilled her blood. "Well, well," the largest man said, dismounting with a thud. His face was pocked with old scars and his breath reeked of whiskey as he leaned close. "Looks like we caught ourselves a pretty little dove." "I have nothing worth stealing," Kathleen said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear clutching at her throat. The man grabbed her chin. "That ain't exactly true, miss. Let go of me." She slapped his hand away, only to be rewarded with a backhanded blow that sent her sprawling. "Feisty one," laughed another outlaw, this one missing several teeth. "Those fetch a good price with certain buyers down in Mexico." The third man, younger than the others but with cold, empty eyes, examined the contents of her saddlebag. "Nothing much here, Tucker, just women's things and some medicine." Tucker, the leader, shrugged. "Don't matter, we got something better." His gaze raked over Kathleen, making her skin crawl. "But first, she's gonna help us catch bigger game." Kathleen struggled as they bound her wrists with rough rope. "What are you talking about?" Tucker's smile made her blood run cold. "There's a bounty hunter been tracking us for weeks. Man's caused us no end of trouble. Word is he's somewhere in these parts. Figure a pretty thing like you tied up and screaming might just draw him out, make him careless." "You're using me as bait." Kathleen's voice rose in disbelief. "Smart girl," Tucker said, hauling her to her feet. "Now walk. There's a perfect spot just up ahead." They forced her forward at gunpoint, leaving poor Daisy whimpering in pain on the ground. Kathleen blinked back tears, both for her loyal horse and for herself. 24 years she'd lived on this earth, most of them spent helping her widowed father run their small cattle ranch, and now it seemed her life would end in these barren hills, far from anyone who loved her. An hour later, they reached a clearing beside a small creek. A lone cottonwood tree stood sentinel at its edge, its branches providing the only shade for miles. Tucker shoved her against its trunk, while his companions secured her with additional ropes around her waist and ankles. "You boys make camp," Tucker ordered. "I'll keep watch. Our friend should be along by sundown if he's following our trail, and he is. Man's like a damn bloodhound." The youngest outlaw spat on the ground. "What if he don't come, Tucker? Then we take her to Nogales tomorrow and sell her. Either way, we profit." Tucker turned to Kathleen with a sinister grin. "Start screaming, girl. Call for help. Make it real convincing-like." When Kathleen clenched her jaw in defiance, Tucker drew his knife and pressed it against her cheek. "I said scream." She had no choice but to comply, her cries for help echoing across the empty landscape as tears streamed down her face. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and soon Kathleen's throat was raw from shouting. Tucker eventually grew bored with her performance and retreated to the shade several yards away, keeping his rifle across his lap. Hours passed. The sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Kathleen's head drooped forward, exhaustion and thirst taking their toll. She wondered if her father had realized she was missing yet. Would anyone ever find her body if these men killed her, or worse, if they sold her across the border? A distant sound made her lift her head. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. Tucker jumped to his feet, signaling to his companions, who grabbed their weapons. "He's coming, get ready." But instead of slowing down, the hoofbeats grew faster, more thunderous. Suddenly, from around a bend in the trail, a magnificent black stallion appeared, moving with incredible speed. Its rider lay low against the horse's neck, a bandana covering the lower half of his face. "It's him!" shouted the toothless outlaw, raising his rifle. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession, but not from the outlaws. The rider had drawn and fired with astonishing speed. 2 of the outlaws dropped immediately. Tucker dove behind a rock, returning fire as the mysterious horseman circled the clearing at breakneck pace. Kathleen watched in awe as the rider suddenly veered toward her, never slowing. As he approached, he fired again, not at the outlaws, but at the ropes binding her to the tree. The bullets severed the ropes with precision, missing her body by inches. Before she could fully comprehend what was happening, the rider had reached her. Without slowing, he leaned from his saddle, wrapped a strong arm around her waist, and lifted her cleanly off the ground. Kathleen found herself seated sideways in front of him, his arms secure around her as they thundered away from the clearing. Tucker's enraged shouts and erratic gunfire faded behind them as the powerful horse carried them deeper into the rugged landscape. Kathleen clung to the stranger's jacket, her heart pounding with equal measures of fear and relief. They rode hard for nearly an hour, crossing 2 streams and navigating winding canyons before the rider finally slowed the horse to a walk. In a small protected hollow surrounded by high rock walls, he brought the stallion to a halt and dismounted, then reached up to help Kathleen down. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her as her feet touched the ground. The man caught her arm to steady her, then pulled down his bandana, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind but handsome in a rugged way. His eyes, a striking steel blue, regarded her with concern. "Are you hurt, miss?" His voice was deep but gentle. Kathleen shook her head, still trying to catch her breath. "No, thanks to you. Who are you?" "Name's Wyatt Garrett." He untied the remains of the rope from her wrists, his touch careful. "I've been tracking those men for 2 weeks. They're wanted for murder and robbery in 3 territories. I'm Kathleen Anderson." She rubbed her chafed wrists. "Those men, they shot my horse. They were going to sell me in Mexico after using me to trap you." Anger flashed in Wyatt's eyes. "I've been on their trail since they murdered a family near Tucson. Father, mother, and their teenage son, left only the youngest daughter alive, hiding in a root cellar." He began unsaddling his horse. "I'm sorry about your mare." "Daisy," Kathleen supplied, tears welling in her eyes. "She was a good horse." Wyatt nodded solemnly. "We'll stay here tonight. That last one, Tucker, he'll be looking for us, but he won't find this place before dark. Come morning, I'll take you to safety." As Wyatt built a small, nearly smokeless fire and prepared a simple meal of beans and jerky, Kathleen studied him. He moved with an efficiency that spoke of years living in the wilderness. His clothes were dusty but well-maintained, and the twin Colt revolvers at his hips looked meticulously cared for. "You're a bounty hunter?" she asked, accepting a tin cup of coffee. "Used to be a lawman. Now I track men the law can't or won't catch." He settled across from her. "Where were you headed when they caught you?" "Copper Springs." "My aunt's ill. I was bringing her medicine." Kathleen sighed, looking into the flames. "My father will be worried sick when I don't arrive. Copper Springs is 2 days' ride from here." Wyatt took a sip of his coffee. "We can head there tomorrow, but we'll need to be careful. Tucker's no fool. He'll guess where I'm taking you." "Why did you risk your life for me? You could have shot them from a distance and collected your bounty." Wyatt's gaze met hers. "No bounty's worth risking an innocent life." "Besides," he added with the ghost of a smile, "I don't much care for men who prey on women." That night, wrapped in a blanket Wyatt provided, Kathleen slept fitfully on the hard ground. Whenever she woke, she found him sitting alert, keeping watch. By morning, she felt both exhausted and strangely safe in the presence of this quiet, capable man. They set out at first light, Kathleen riding behind Wyatt on his stallion, her arms wrapped around his waist. The horse, which Wyatt called Shadow, seemed unbothered by the double burden, maintaining a steady pace through the rocky terrain. "How did you become a bounty hunter?" Kathleen asked as they rode, finding that conversation helped distract her from the discomfort of the saddle and the lingering fear of Tucker pursuing them. Wyatt was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying back to her on the wind. "I was a sheriff in a small town in Colorado, had a wife, Emma, we were happy." His shoulders tensed beneath her hands. Gang of outlaws rode through one day, robbed the bank. Emma was there, depositing money from our small farm. Kathleen's heart constricted. They killed her. Along with 3 others. I tracked those men for months. When I finally found them, the territorial judge let them go on a technicality, said I'd gathered evidence improperly. His voice hardened. I turned in my badge that day, decided if the law wouldn't bring justice, I would. "I'm sorry about your wife," Kathleen said softly. "It was 5 years ago." He guided Shadow down a narrow trail. "I've been on the trail ever since." They rode in silence after that, making good time until midday when they stopped to rest the horse and eat some dried meat and hardtack from Wyatt's provisions. As they prepared to continue their journey, the distant sound of multiple horses made them both freeze. Wyatt's hand immediately went to his gun as he scanned the horizon. "Get down," he ordered quietly, helping Kathleen into a depression between 2 large boulders. "Stay here." He crept to a higher vantage point, lying flat against the rock as he peered over. After a tense moment, he slid back down to her. "Tucker, he's got 3 more men with him, must have met up with the rest of his gang." Kathleen's blood ran cold. "What do we do? They are between us and Copper Springs now." Wyatt's mind was clearly working rapidly. "We'll have to change direction. There's a small settlement about a day's ride east Redemption. We can get help there." They mounted quickly, Wyatt leading Shadow on a careful path that kept them concealed by the terrain for as long as possible. When they finally emerged onto open ground, he urged the stallion into a gallop. They'd covered perhaps a mile when shots rang out behind them. Wyatt cursed under his breath, pushing Shadow harder as bullets kicked up dust around them. "Hold on tight," he called to Kathleen. She clutched his waist as they raced across the plains, the thunder of pursuing hooves growing louder despite Shadow's impressive speed. Wyatt suddenly veered toward a series of rock formations, guiding the horse through narrow passages barely wide enough for them to pass. A bullet ricocheted off stone inches from Kathleen's head, making her duck instinctively against Wyatt's back. They emerged into a box canyon with sheer walls on 3 sides. "It's a dead end," Kathleen cried. "No," Wyatt pointed to a narrow trail zigzagging up the canyon wall. "Up there. They'll have to come through one at a time, and it'll slow them down." The trail was treacherous, barely wide enough for Shadow, with a sheer drop on one side. Kathleen closed her eyes, pressing her face against Wyatt's back as the horse carefully picked its way upward. Gunfire echoed through the canyon, but the angle made it difficult for the outlaws to aim effectively. When they reached the top, Wyatt urged Shadow across the high plateau. Looking back, Kathleen saw Tucker leading his men up the trail. "They're still coming," she warned. "We have a head start now. There's a place ahead where we can lose them." True to his word, Wyatt led them to a series of intersecting dry creek beds, following one then another in a confusing pattern. By the time they stopped to rest at sunset, there was no sign of pursuit. They made camp in a protected hollow, and Wyatt built another small fire. Kathleen's entire body ached from the long day in the saddle, and exhaustion pulled at her limbs like lead weights. "You should sleep," Wyatt said, noticing her drooping eyelids. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," she protested. He shook his head. "I'm used to going without sleep, Kathleen. We still have a long ride tomorrow." Despite her intention to stay awake and share the watch, Kathleen drifted off quickly. She woke once in the night to find Wyatt placing his coat over her against the desert chill. Their eyes met in the dying firelight, and something unspoken passed between them before she succumbed to sleep once more. Dawn broke clear and cold. They ate a sparse breakfast before continuing their journey. As they rode, Kathleen found herself increasingly aware of the man before her, the strength in his back where she rested her cheek, the gentle way he handled his horse, the quiet competence that seemed to define him. "Tell me about your home," Wyatt said, breaking a long silence. Kathleen smiled, grateful for the distraction from her confusing thoughts. "My father and I have a small cattle ranch near the Mogollon Rim. It's beautiful country pine forests and clear streams. My mother died when I was 12, so it's been just the two of us for a long time. You help with the ranch work, every bit of it, roping, branding, mending fences. Pa says I ride better than most cowhands he's hired." She felt rather than heard Wyatt's chuckle. "I believe it. You've handled this journey better than most men would." "Not much choice," Kathleen said wryly. "Though I'll admit I'm looking forward to a real bed and a hot bath. Redemption's not much, but they do have a decent hotel. You can rest there while I send word to your father and alert the local law about Tucker." The mention of Tucker sobered them both. They rode vigilantly, Wyatt frequently checking their back trail, but no pursuit materialized. By mid-afternoon, they crested a hill to see a small settlement nestled in the valley below a single street with wooden buildings on either side, a church steeple rising above the rest. "Redemption," Wyatt announced. As they rode down the main street, curious eyes followed them. Kathleen was acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, her once neat traveling dress torn and dusty, her hair falling from its pins. Wyatt guided Shadow to the hitching post in front of a 2-story building with a sign reading Redemption Hotel and Saloon. He helped her down, his hands lingering briefly at her waist. "Wait here, I'll get you a room." While Wyatt went inside, Kathleen stood beside Shadow, patting the tired horse's neck. "You're a good boy," she murmured. "Thank you for carrying us so far." "Well, ain't you a pretty thing, despite the trail dust?" Kathleen turned to find a well-dressed man watching her with undisguised interest. His expensive suit and gold watch chain marked him as someone of means. "I'm just passing through," she said politely but firmly. "Name's Joseph Caldwell. I own the silver mine outside town." He moved closer. "Don't believe I've had the pleasure." Before Kathleen could respond, Wyatt emerged from the hotel. His expression hardened when he saw Caldwell. "Your room's ready," he told Kathleen, placing a protective hand at the small of her back. Caldwell's smile faltered. "Garrett, didn't realize she was with you. She is." Wyatt's tone left no room for debate. "Good day, Caldwell." He guided Kathleen into the hotel, his jaw tight with tension. "Room 3 upstairs," he said, handing her a key. "I've arranged for a bath to be brought up." "I need to see to Shadow and speak with the sheriff." "You know that man?" Kathleen asked. "Caldwell's not someone you want to know." Wyatt's expression was grim. "Stay in your room until I return. Lock the door." An hour later, freshly bathed and dressed in a simple calico dress the hotel owner's wife had kindly loaned her, Kathleen felt almost human again. She sat on the edge of the bed, combing out her damp hair when a knock sounded at the door. "Who is it?" she called, remembering Wyatt's warning. "It's me." Wyatt's voice was unmistakable. She opened the door to find him holding a tray with a pot of coffee and 2 plates of hot food. He'd clearly visited the barber, his face clean-shaven and his dark hair neatly trimmed. He'd also changed into clean clothes, a blue shirt that matched his eyes and dark trousers. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "Starving," she admitted, taking a seat. "What did the sheriff say?" Wyatt poured coffee for them both. "He's sending telegrams to nearby towns. With luck, they'll intercept Tucker before he causes more trouble." He hesitated. "I also sent a wire to your father letting him know you're safe and where you are." Relief washed over Kathleen. "Thank you, he must be worried sick." They ate in companionable silence for a while, the hot food a welcome change from trail rations. Kathleen found herself studying Wyatt's face in the soft lamplight. Without the dust of the trail, and with his new clean-shaven appearance, he looked younger, the hard lines of his face softened. "How long have you been hunting men like Tucker?" she asked. "5 years." He set down his fork. "Long enough to know it's a lonely life." Something in his voice made Kathleen's heart flutter. "Do you ever think of stopping, of settling somewhere?" His blue eyes met hers. "I didn't. Until recently." The atmosphere in the room shifted, became charged with unspoken possibilities. Kathleen found herself unable to look away from his gaze, her breath catching in her throat. A loud commotion from the street below broke the moment. They both moved to the window to see 4 riders galloping into town, guns drawn. "Tucker," Wyatt growled, instantly reaching for his revolvers. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me." "Wyatt, wait," Kathleen grabbed his arm. "There are 4 of them. I've faced worse odds." He gently but firmly removed her hand. "Lock the door, Kathleen." She did as he asked, heart pounding as she heard his boots on the stairs. After a moment's hesitation, she moved back to the window, peering cautiously around the curtain. Below, Tucker and his men had dismounted in front of the saloon. The street had emptied of townspeople, doors slamming shut as everyone sought safety. Only Wyatt remained, walking steadily toward the 4 outlaws, his stance relaxed but ready. "Tucker," he called. "You're wanted for murder in 3 territories. Surrender now and you'll get a fair trial." Tucker laughed, an ugly sound that carried clearly to Kathleen's window. "You've been a thorn in my side too long, Garrett. Where's the girl? She belongs to me now." "She doesn't belong to anyone." Wyatt stopped in the middle of the street. "And you won't touch her again." 4 against 1, lawman. Those ain't odds I'd bet on." Wyatt's voice remained calm. "Last chance to surrender." Tucker's response was to draw his gun. The movement triggered an explosion of violence. Wyatt drew both revolvers with lightning speed, firing with deadly accuracy. 2 of Tucker's men fell before they could even clear their holsters. The 3rd managed to get off a wild shot before Wyatt's bullet found his heart. Tucker, however, had dived behind a water trough. He rose to fire, his bullet grazing Wyatt's arm. Wyatt rolled behind a hitching post, returning fire as Tucker retreated toward the alley beside the saloon. Kathleen lost sight of both men. Frantic, she rushed to the door, ignoring Wyatt's instructions as she hurried downstairs and onto the porch of the hotel. The street was eerily quiet, the bodies of 3 outlaws lying motionless in the dust. A shot rang out from the alley, followed by a grunt of pain. Kathleen's heart stopped. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound, reaching the alley entrance in time to see Tucker standing over Wyatt, who was clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. "Should have stayed a lawman, Garrett," Tucker sneered, raising his gun for a killing shot. Kathleen reacted instinctively. Grabbing a discarded bottle from beside the saloon, she hurled it with all her might. It shattered against Tucker's head, momentarily stunning him. That split second was all Wyatt needed. Despite his wound, he raised his revolver and fired once, the bullet striking Tucker between the eyes. Kathleen rushed to Wyatt's side as Tucker crumpled to the ground. "You're hurt." "Not bad," Wyatt grimaced, allowing her to help him sit up. "Bullet just grazed my ribs." The town doctor confirmed Wyatt's assessment. The wound was painful but not life-threatening. After stitching and bandaging him, the doctor insisted Wyatt rest for at least a few days before traveling. That evening, Kathleen sat beside Wyatt's bed in his hotel room, refusing to leave despite his protests that she needed rest. "You saved my life," he said, watching her with those intense blue eyes. "That was either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both," she smiled, taking his hand in hers, "but I couldn't stand by and watch him kill you." Wyatt's fingers tightened around hers. "Why not?" The directness of his question took her breath away. Kathleen found herself unable to dissemble. "Because in just 2 days, you've become important to me, more important than I thought possible." Something in his expression softened, the hardness of years on the trail melting away. I've spent 5 years hunting men like Tucker, thinking it would fill the emptiness Emma's death left behind. It never did. His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. But when I saw you tied to that tree, something changed. I wasn't just doing my job anymore. I needed to save you. And you did. Kathleen leaned closer, drawn by the warmth in his eyes. Now I'm wondering if maybe you saved me too. Wyatt reached up with his free hand, gently touching her cheek. I've been dead inside for a long time, Kathleen, until you. She turned her face into his palm. What happens now? Your father will be here in 2 days. I imagine he'll want to take you home. And you, will you go back to hunting bounties? Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. For the first time in years, I'm thinking about a different future. 2 days later, Thomas Anderson arrived in redemption, nearly collapsing with relief when he saw his daughter safe and sound. After hearing the full story, he grasped Wyatt's hand with both of his own, gratitude shining in eyes that matched Kathleen's. You saved my daughter's life, Mr. Garrett. I can never repay that debt. No debt, sir. I did what any man would do. Thomas shook his head. Not any man would have risked his life against those odds. He glanced between Wyatt and Kathleen, noting the way they stood close together, the unspoken connection between them. Will you be continuing your bounty hunting now? Wyatt's gaze met Kathleen's. Actually, sir, I've been considering a change. I hear the Mogollon Rim country is beautiful, good cattle land. Thomas's weathered face broke into a knowing smile. That it is. And as it happens, I've been looking for a partner in my ranch, getting too old to manage it all myself. Pa, Kathleen flushed. What? Just stating facts, daughter. Thomas turned back to Wyatt. You'd be welcome to visit, Mr. Garrett, see if ranching might suit you better than bounty hunting. That evening, Wyatt and Kathleen walked along the outskirts of town, the setting sun painting the desert in gold and crimson. Shadow followed behind them, reins dragging in the dust. Your father is a good man, Wyatt said. He likes you. Kathleen smiled up at him. Though his offer was hardly subtle. Are you embarrassed by it? She stopped walking, turning to face him. No, I'm not. Are you? Wyatt shook his head, taking both her hands in his. Kathleen, I've spent 5 years living with ghosts, seeking vengeance instead of life, meeting you. It woke something in me I thought was dead forever. Wyatt, let me finish. I know we've only known each other a few days. I know it's too soon for promises or declarations, but I'd like the chance to see where this might lead, if you're willing. Kathleen stepped closer, her heart beating a rapid tattoo against her ribs. I'm more than willing. When those men tied me to that tree, I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. Wyatt's hands released hers, moving to cradle her face with gentle reverence. I can't promise it will be easy. I've been alone a long time. So have I in my way. She covered his hands with her own. But I'm not afraid of hard work or rough patches. I never have been. His smile transformed his face, erasing the last vestiges of the hardened bounty hunter. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. When Kathleen responded, rising on her toes and sliding her arms around his neck, it deepened into something more powerful, a promise, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Wyatt kept his arms around her waist, unwilling to let her go. I should warn you, he said, his voice rough with emotion, I've never herded cattle in my life. Kathleen laughed, the sound bright and full of joy. Don't worry, Cowboy. I'll teach you everything you need to know. 6 months later, under a clear autumn sky, Kathleen Anderson became Kathleen Garrett in a simple ceremony at the ranch where she'd grown up. Wyatt, who had proven himself a natural with horses if not with cattle, had built them a small house on the property, not far from the main ranch house where Thomas could maintain his independence while still being close to family. That evening, as they sat on the porch of their new home watching the sunset, Wyatt took his wife's hand, bringing it to his lips. Happy? He asked. Kathleen leaned against his shoulder, contentment flowing through her. More than I ever thought possible. She turned to look into his eyes that no longer held the haunted shadows of the past. Are you? Wyatt's answer was to pull her into his arms, his kiss conveying what words could not, that the man who had once lived only to hunt outlaws had found redemption in her love, just as surely as she had found her future in his. As darkness fell over the ranch, bringing with it the brilliant canopy of stars that had witnessed their first meeting, Wyatt and Kathleen remained on their porch, wrapped in each other's arms, the dangers of the past forgotten in the promise of tomorrow.